morning everyone, welcome back to another video. I want to talk to you about a couple of things in this video, primarily the ceasefire attempts when it comes to Lebanon following the recent intense escalations, then the situation when it comes to the countries calling for the ceasefire, and the attacks that Hezbollah had on Israel in recent days. And the final thing that I wanted to be talking to you about is the additional money that Israel is getting from the United States and what that means. Firstly, Hezbollah are increasing their attacks on Israel. Today they had over 150 missiles launched at Israel in the suburbs of Haifa, populated civilian areas that are very far from Lebanon. So this means that Hezbollah are increasing the range on a day-to-day basis, and nothing that Israel is doing in Lebanon is stopping that. Today Israel reported that they targeted another senior figure in Hezbollah in the southern suburb of Lebanon, of Beirut, Al-Dahiya Al-Janubiyya, who was in charge of their drones. Now Hezbollah continued with additional strikes on certain locations belonging to the Israeli army, very strategic locations, warehouses, bases for the Israeli army, and today they released more footage of their attacks that they conducted in the past few days. All of a sudden you have talk coming from Western countries about a ceasefire. The United States, France, the UK, Germany, the usual Israeli supporters calling for a ceasefire in Lebanon ahead of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the UN. Why are these countries calling for a ceasefire when they vetoed the ceasefire when it comes to Gaza? Russia, China, Brazil, all of them called for an immediate ceasefire as soon as this war began, and the intensity of Israel's attacks in Gaza was nowhere near what they conducted in Lebanon. In Gaza used to have over 1,000 killed every single day, late hundreds to 1,000 a day. We had massacres in hospitals and genuine full-blown genocide and destruction. Yet these countries were silent, and they were legitimizing Israel's blockade on Gaza, saying that they can cut off the electricity and water and aid and everything, and vetoed all of the ceasefires up until we reached the stage of the initial temporary ceasefire, following which more countries started to change their tone when it comes to Israel. The link to that could be the fact that there were reports previously that the United States and Israel's allies gave them approximately 30 to 40 days in the beginning of the war on Gaza to eliminate Hamas. And when Israel couldn't do that, they started pushing them for a ceasefire, and of course things moved on from that point, and we had even bigger massacres following the temporary ceasefire. If they did that before with Gaza, why are they doing this now with Lebanon? Well, that's for the sake of Israel. Why? Because calling for a ceasefire would have to force Hezbollah to adhere to the ceasefire, meaning Hezbollah will be cutting their position as a supporting front to Gaza. So Hezbollah's participation in Al-Aqsa flood as a supporting front, as they declared, came only to support the Palestinian people and stop the war in Gaza. Now these countries are calling for this ceasefire so that Hezbollah can stop their attacks and in effect take them out of the equation when it comes to Gaza. So this would be in Israel's favor. That's why they started asking for and calling for a ceasefire now. Although Israel is not accepting it. Benjamin Netanyahu, we had reports today in Israel that he might come out tomorrow in his speech to declare the ending of the intense battles in Gaza and moving on to phase 3 in the war, or phase C in the war, something which is very, very confusing, because many times in Israel we heard them saying that they already are in phase 3. Yoav Gallant said that, and Benjamin Netanyahu said that, but these people constantly change things around and declare whatever they want to whenever they want. as if they can change everything based on their mood every single day. So the call for a ceasefire with Lebanon without a simultaneous call for a ceasefire with Gaza will not work. That's purely because Hezbollah told Israel, told everyone, we are not stopping the day-to-day attacks, and they're proving it day by day. They haven't responded to Israel with the same indiscriminate attacks on civilians that Israel carried out in Lebanon, but they did increase it when it comes to the depth, the locations that they target, and how important and vital they are for Israel, putting 3 million Israelis in shelters to hide from the Hezbollah missiles. So Hezbollah are not backing down. And today you're talking about the Haifa area. The Haifa area started to have attacks on a day-to-day basis. The areas surrounding it, the suburbs, areas after Haifa. Of course, their ballistic missile reached near Tel Aviv. So you're talking about a constant expansion without going all out on Israel and not being dragged to an all-out war, because Benjamin Netanyahu wants to drag everyone to an all-out war. However, so far Hezbollah are not falling to Benjamin Netanyahu's will, and they are responding with what they see fit, although they have the capabilities to continue and escalate. That's when it comes to the ceasefire, and we're still having more escalation coming from Hezbollah on Israel. They haven't been intimidated. Their structure hasn't been hurt. Their military capabilities and their missile range haven't been hit whatsoever when it comes to Israel, and they publish supporting evidence when it comes to that in their recent videos. Which leads us to the 8.7 billion that the United States is sending to Israel. They're constantly saying that we want to reach a ceasefire. There are hopeful developments and positive vibes. Blinken not long ago said that both Israel and the Palestinian side agreed on 15 out of 18 points when it comes to the ceasefire in Gaza. And the representatives of the US who were sent to Lebanon were supposedly trying to mediate and reach some sort of a deal between Hezbollah and Israel, and Lebanon and Israel, because Israel now included all of Lebanon, and it's no longer Hezbollah, and everyone's seeing that the whole narrative of Israel fighting Hezbollah is unsubstantiated. These people have a genuine desire to occupy parts of Lebanon. Now you have the IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi saying that we have been waiting for this opportunity for years to hit Hezbollah, and we need to continue attacking them. So they had a plan from a very long time ago to attack Hezbollah, and now is the time from their perspective, because it's all out. Hezbollah participated in Al-Aqsa flood, although not in a very intense manner, and they were very reserved and calculated, yet very strategic when it comes to their attacks. And now Herzi Halevi is saying, no, it's an opportunity. It's open already. Why should we stop now? Let's continue. The same tone is resonating with everyone who supports Benjamin Netanyahu. As a matter of fact, we've had threats again coming from the far-right elements of his government, saying that if there is any ceasefire, if there is any permanent ceasefire with Lebanon, that's in Ben Gvir's situation, Jewish Power, his party, will be leaving the government. So you're talking about people who, once they see a certain escalation, they don't want to back down an inch. They want to continue and escalate and make things far worse. And Netanyahu considers them heavily. He went on this war to run away from the criticism that he was getting when it comes to Gaza, the criticism from an Israeli population perspective, and also from an international perspective, reached high and record levels when it comes to Netanyahu. And now the focus is shifted to Lebanon. And people are talking more about Lebanon, although we are still seeing massacres in Gaza. Massacres against civilians. Again, the evidence that's coming out from Gaza is that the resistance is targeting the IDF. We're seeing no strategic losses when it comes to the resistance, but Israel is still targeting civilians to cover up their military failure. The same thing that they've done ever since the beginning. They went out on this genocide with an emotional, hate-filled, racist response to cover up their military humiliation. And they came up with all of the propaganda surrounding the 7th of October and their whole pseudo-narrative and lies to cover up the fact that their whole division of Gaza was completely destroyed within less than 2 hours. So Gaza hasn't been solved. Yesterday we spoke about the fact that Israel is saying that Hamas now controls 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, and they are providing services, and they're even putting Israeli healthcare services to shame when it comes to their vaccines in Gaza, and that the banks are still functioning alongside other things to do with the Hamas governing and powerful side in Gaza. So where are they going? And what are they trying to reach? Well, Benjamin Netanyahu realized in the past couple of days that Hezbollah, ever since the 8th of October, the date of their participation in Al-Aqsa flood and their attacks on Israel in solidarity and support with Gaza, are not the Hezbollah that he has been fighting previously. Before, when we had attacks on Hezbollah and some other movements for that matter as well, there was something of an instant response that is not very much calculated. However, Hezbollah have proven that they can contain certain attacks without being dragged to the desires of the Israeli side at the time that Israel chooses. And one thing that's very important here, this escalation came now, but it wasn't approved now. It was approved in October 2023, 3 days after the participation of Hezbollah in Al-Aqsa flood. Israel already authorized a big operation in Lebanon, but it wasn't suitable at the time for Benjamin Netanyahu. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Netanyahu was telling everyone previously that we should not focus on Hezbollah now. The main focus should be on Gaza. We shouldn't be spending time on Lebanon. He waited for the time that is most suitable for him when the tensions reached the peak, and he decided to go on this escalation with Lebanon to deviate, divert the attention, buy himself some more time, and potentially have more expansion in a hope that things will have a snowball effect and lead to an all-out war, and all of a sudden the United States has to participate for the sake of Israel, not just in defense, but in attack as well. So far, with the attempts of a ceasefire, there are talks, but there are no progresses, neither in Gaza nor in Lebanon. Hezbollah made it very clear. They will not be stopping the resistance attacks on Israel up until the war in Gaza ends, and there needs to be no negotiation. No one needs to negotiate with them. All they need to do is simply stop the war in Gaza, because that front, from their perspective, started as a support for Gaza. So long as Israel continues in Gaza and doesn't declare a full ceasefire, the front in Lebanon will remain open and will remain very vulnerable when it comes to the possibility of a bigger escalation, not just for an all-out war, but potentially a very big and devastating regional war.